Well, Joe Biden has just taken out a contract on the American people, and more specifically, the American people that are not going along with the narrative being pushed by the Democrats and the Biden administration. You see, in a new domestic crackdown policy, the Biden administration has now had the Department of Homeland Security create this document that I'm about to show you. And what this document does is it's an internal review of how they can better go after domestic extremism here in the United States of America, which they outline in this report very clearly, that those are those people who, well, believe that the 2020 election was a fraud, are against certain COVID-19 mandates and measures, or believes a myriad of conspiracy theories. I have so much information to show you that you're going to want to hear. This report just got published March 2022. But before I get into it, just a quick break. Check this out. Studies now reveal that our appearance directly affects our mental health. In fact, many anti-aging supplements found on the store shelves try to capitalize on that. And most of them fall short. That's because they fail to get to the root of the problem. These products typically try to hide wrinkles, but this is only temporary. The alternative is a solution that goes underneath the surface of the skin in order to promote skin elasticity and, of course, its overall appearance. It goes by the name BioTrust at healthwithlisa.com. This collagen quickly restores the youthfulness to your skin. It even helps to combat wrinkles, and it does so better than anything I've ever tried. But get this, the reason that this product is so good at reducing the wrinkles in your skin is because it literally supercharges your collagen intake. Collagen is the main ingredient in this product, and it's the very reason why it works so well. It gets to the source of the problem that causes wrinkles. Collagen is the #1 protein in our skin, and it is exactly what is needed to promote elasticity and a more youthful appearance. Imagine how good your skin can look by this summer by simply using this product. If you have been looking for a way to look and feel good, then get to healthwithlisa.com today. Right now, in fact, they have a very amazing offer of up to 51% off their product. Not only that, but they also have a 60-day money-back guarantee. So if you're not happy for any reason, you can send it back for that refund. Not only that, but there's free shipping, free coaching, and a free new e-report, 14 foods for amazing skin. Get it today by going to healthwithlisa.com and take advantage of that more youthful appearance. Want more information? It's found in the description box below. All right, back to the broadcast. So let's dive into this new domestic crackdown internal review that was published by Biden administration's Department of Homeland Security. And here's the report here. So we're going to follow along this thing together, but it's titled Report to the Secretary of Homeland Security, Domestic Violent Extremism Internal Review, Observations, Findings, and Recommendations. Now I'm going to scroll down here to page 3 because it kind of gives you an executive summary of why they have done this. And it says, at Secretary Mayorkas' direction, a cross-departmental worker group of senior officials conducted a comprehensive review of how to best prevent, to detect, and respond to potential threats related to domestic violent extremism within the Department of Homeland Security. The department's chief security officer led the Domestic Violent Extremism Internal Review Working Group, which included experts from across all these departments. The working group also consulted with interagency partners during the course of its review. Now it goes on. The working group found very few instances of the DHS workforce having been engaged in domestic violent extremism. However, the working group assessed that the department has significant gaps that have impeded its ability to comprehensively prevent, detect, and respond to potential threats related to domestic violent extremism within the DHS. These gaps, which the department is working with urgency to close, may have impacted DHS officials' ability to adequately identify and address these threats. And here are some of the things that they point out that they're having an issue with. A lack of an official definition of domestic violent extremism. So they don't like the fact that they're not very clear on that definition. So I'm quite curious what the definition will be. A lack of workforce training specified to identify and report violent extremist activity. A lack of specialized training. Also a lack of centralized DHS-wide investigative case management systems and insufficient funding. So these are the reason that they're calling for this. So basically, what this entire report is on, and I haven't gotten to the next page yet, this gets even more interesting, is they want to review their policies of domestic extremism and how they're handling that here in the United States and how they can better handle it. In other words, this is a massive crackdown on domestic extremism. The question has to be asked is, who are these domestic extremists and what qualifies for them and what qualifies for that? And if you've read and watched me on Restricted Republic, then you already know it includes things like being against mandates and measures of COVID-19. It also includes, these were published on bulletins. It also includes if you believe the 2020 election was a fraud. It also, if you are against abortion, that could put you on it. If you believe in the New World Order, that's another thing that can put you on the list. These are outlined in Janet Napolitano's, I believe it was 2010, right-wing extremist report that was published there. And even if you have certain Christian beliefs, you believe in end time Bible prophecies, all these things could make you a domestic extremist here in the United States of America. Then they go on to say why they have created this report. And here's their reasoning, right? Which kind of touched on, but here it is. Here's their reason why they created this document. Domestic violent extremism poses one of the most significant terrorist-related threats to the United States. Interesting, because it never did until, well, Joe Biden got in charge, and they expanded in February 2021. In recognition of the gravity of the threat, Secretary Mayorkas designated for the first time domestic violent extremism as a national priority area. So suddenly he ups it. This is worse than foreign terrorists. We need to go after our own. He ups the priority level in a federal FEMA grant programs, while simultaneously also increasing training opportunities for law enforcement partners through domestic violent extremist threat assessment and management programs. So they're saying very clearly it's the number one threat in the world, which just so happened didn't be a national priority area until Joe Biden became in charge. Then Joe Biden, who's been very clear about targeting and going after his political dissent, using media to do it, using social media, using organizations like Facebook, Twitter, Google, and the like to silence his opposition. Well, now we've got entire departments specifically geared in on that. And this report is making it all better, filling in the gaps, if you will, how to better define the definition for violent extremism. And the question, again, has to be asked, who are these violent extremism? Well, if you scroll in that same report to page 5, and I'm referencing the pages here so you could see it for yourself, it says the current threat landscape. And here's what they say it is. A March 2021 unclassified threat assessment prepared by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence by the DOJ and DHS noted that domestic violent extremists who are motivated by a range of ideologies and galvanized by recent political and societal events in the U.S. pose an elevated threat to the Homeland Security in 2021. The assessment pointed to newer socio-political developments such as narratives of fraud in the recent, as in 2020 general election, the emboldening impact of the violent breach of the U.S. Capitol, Capital 6, and conditions related to the COVID-19 pandemic and conspiracy theories promoting violence that will almost certainly, they say, spur some domestic violent extremists to try to engage in violence this year. In other words, they're digging deeper into this department for these kinds of people, for the people who believe that there is fraud in the recent 2020 election. Notice they didn't say anything about the 2016 election. So are you allowed then to believe that there's fraud in the 2016 election? Because if you're not allowed to believe it in 2020, then how can you believe it in 2016 or any other election? Why then just the quote unquote recent election. Why does that classify you as a potential person to commit extremist crimes? Then they go on to talk about Capitol 6. Well, those at Capitol 6, that kind of event. So you're telling me you're not allowed to protest if you're basically a Trump supporter and believe more of a Republican and conservative bent. So these are the people that are directly called out in this report. And to further that, we also have COVID-19. If you are against certain things with the COVID-19 pandemic, against mandates and measures, then by golly, you could spur someone to commit a crime of some sort, some kind of violent nature. And again, then it also points out conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories about COVID, what specifically about the biolabs, about Wuhan, what more specifically, because a lot of those have turned out to be true, but yet the Biden administration had no mention of BLM, no mention of Antifa, again, no mention of the 2016 election, no. This was all specifically in this report targeted at his political opposition. There really is, I'm trying to see another way around this, and I just don't see it. I just don't see it. But this is why this report has me worried, because they're making recommendations for these departments. And here, let me just make this statement. Nobody wants domestic violence in the U.S. If there's some freaking actual domestic violence happening in the U.S., and it does happen, right? But when it does happen, we should crack down and go after it. Arrest those people, put them in jail. But you cannot go after freedom of speech and attack things like someone's view on the election, whether they're right or wrong is beside the point, or someone's view of COVID-19, whether they're wrong or right is beside the point. These are called freedoms of speech. But instead of going after violent, radical extremism and actual mentality, it's more like, I feel like, they're going after their political opposition here. So they go on to make recommendations in this report of what they recommend that they do. And here's just a few of those, and I'm going to scroll down here to about page 8, and I'm really going to brief over these. But recommendation 1 of what they need to do: adopt a consistent definition of domestic violent extremists. I'm quite curious what that definition will actually be. We already know that they have like a brief definition in the DOJ and the FBI, but what are they going to actually adopt? Are they going to make a list of violent extremist ideologies under that domestic violent extremist definition? I would love to see it. And I hope, we should be filing a Freedom of Information Request Act to get that out when they actually do come up with it. I'll keep you up to date on Restricted Republic. Number 2, adopt and implement a Department of Homeland Security approved list of behaviors. Wait, behaviors that may be indicators of domestic violent extremism. So they are. They do want to create a list. These behaviors are bad, and these behaviors are acceptable. Actually, I don't think they'll have an acceptable list. They'll just have an unacceptable list, which thus far, we've already heard some of those earlier in this report. What would be unacceptable? This seems more like a political attack. Number 3, develop and implement an official DHS directive that provides guidance on how to identify and respond to extremists. Recommendation: incorporate a list of violent extremist activity into their DHS policy. 5, educate the workforce there at the DHS. 6, inform employees of how they are to refrain. Number 7, provide training on how to identify and educate violent extremist activities to employees. Number 8 here, and I'm briefing through those: enhance hiring practices through initiatives under Trusted Workforce 2.0 to deter people. And number 9, establish the intra-departmental sharing capabilities. They want to have a network between departments that they could share with each other. Number 10, promote early intervention to get support of employees who may be at risk themselves of violence. In other words, let's create a department within their own branch saying these are not acceptable behaviors. If you're in any of these behaviors or reading certain social media posts, we're going to kick you out of the department because only one political side is allowed. Do you see how that works? 11, establish efficient and accessible reporting and intake mechanisms. And 12, accelerate the expansion of DHS insider threat program capabilities. And 13, incorporate the DHS list of behaviors that may be indicators of violent extremism into inside threat tools and early monitoring. That's a big one. That's a big one. List of behaviors, yet again, what they approve and don't approve. Again, I want to see that information when it's published. 14, explore expanding the use of publicly available information, including social media. So now, of course, they also want to go after your social media. And 15, establish an ongoing domestic violent extremism working group. That's interesting. So the Department of Homeland Security's Biden's administration, his Mayorkas, right, wants to keep tabs more specifically on you, wants a bigger definition for a domestic extremist because it's suddenly a problem once Joe Biden got in charge. And more specifically, they want to create a list of what those threats or people, who they are. Well, I don't know about you, but I want to see that list. I absolutely want to see that list. But I feel, and I know you guys feel it with me, I feel like there's a contract being taken out on certain Americans because suddenly it never was a big issue before. But when one president gets in, now it's the biggest thing since sliced bread. Meanwhile, BLM is allowed to loot and riot and burn our cities down, and nobody does anything. They're bailed out of jail. It doesn't seem fair to me. So anyhow, wanted to bring you all of this information. I know I went on a little longer. Thanks again for tuning in. I'm Lisa Haven signing out.